Welcome everybody to the third session of Aarhus Symposium 2015, following the consumer tech track. Now, without further ado, I would like to welcome the moderator who will guide us through this session. She's the Chief Business Correspondent at the Danish Broadcast Corporation. It is Nina Munk-Berein.
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much. So I'm very happy to be here for the fourth year in a row, but even more happier to introduce the next speakers, because they're going to tell about, as the name pretty much states, Funded by Me, how ideas get funded, but also tested in the market. One might think or add that this method basically is something you did in the old days, before banks, internet, and everything else. So basically, what's the fuss about? But let's hear from the entrepreneurs themselves, Daniel Daboczy and also Arno Smit.
You're standing here?
Thank you.
So, hi everybody. Thank you for the introduction. Thank you for the invite. It's quite flattering to be here and speak in front of you guys. I think both Arno and myself, we are not as good students as you apparently are.
Yeah.
We missed a few classes.
Yeah,
We maybe drank too much beers.
Yes, indeed.
But we made it here, right? And that shows you that, you know, the path of life is kind of crooked, and it's up to you to make it. So just as a quick introduction, this is Arno Smit, and myself, I'm Daniel Daboczy. We're the co-founders of FundedByMe. We started basically the company out of a frustration, and then we become the symbols of the company. And why I mean symbols of the company is because we on paper are extremely strange, very unfundable.
If we can put it that way.
Myself, I'm a Romanian art major. That's double negative right now in this day and age. Arno is an African coder. If he would send anybody a CV, say I'm an African coder, I want to work for you, nobody would open the door, I can tell you that.
Yes.
But we met, and now we symbolize a huge part of the world where a lot of people on paper are unfundable. First entrepreneurs, people who are not living close to a financial center, etc. And on the other hand, we also symbolize the other half of our client base, which is people like us, who are good business angels, who could be awesome helpers in a company, but are not wealthy enough to become business angels on a traditional way. Myself, I've invested in over 100 companies. I'm one of the most active investors in Sweden, but very small investments in every one.
Every bit helps. That's
every bit helps.
Every bit helps.
Yeah. So with that, I think you're going to start to talk.
No, actually, you're going to go.
I'm going to start to talk.
First.
Okay.
Yeah.
So yes, so first of all, thank you for the introduction about crowdfunding. How many people in this room have heard about crowdfunding? Well, this is insanely awesome. 5 years ago, nobody would have raised their hands. How many people heard about Funded by Me? Very little.
There's one up there, at least.
No, this is a good and a bad thing. The bad thing is that you haven't heard about it yet, which means that you lost quite a lot of opportunities, you lost quite a lot of money, and you could have invested in the next big thing already. What's good, though, is that you can invest in the next big thing. Opportunities are lying in front of you, and that shows us that there's still a lot of people out there who could become our clients. Crowdfunding is nothing new. As you see on the left side, that's one of the Nordic museums in Stockholm. 2,500 people pooled together at the end of the 18th century to create this monstrosity. They didn't get anything back. They got the bragging right and some thank you note. But it showed that we did do crowdfunding even before the day of the internet. The difference with today and then is that we do it today extremely fast, we do it extremely globally, and we do it extremely effective, which means that if you have an idea and it's awesome, it will travel the globe exponentially. There are rules saying that if you have 33 people in the room, you can actually reach 33 million quite instantly, just by the fact of who knows who. There's a 2 or a 3 and a 4 degrees of separation. Yeah. Mr. Pulitzer in New York, when New York got the Statue of Liberty, they realized that we can't put it on anything. So he went out to the New Yorkers in the 1800s and said, look, can we raise funds to build this monumental platform for the Statue of Liberty? And everybody, even the guy, the poor kid who shoe-shined shoes, even he put in a cent or whatever he could. And suddenly they had a huge pool of money, huge momentum, and they had the foundation of the Statue of the Liberty.
Yeah, and they were able to ship it over from Paris, where it was at that stage.
Yes, because if you don't have a foundation, you can't ship it over. You can't put it on anything.
Oh, hold on. Something happened.
Yeah, now it's time for the break, right?
Perfect. So, again, my name is Arno Smit. I'm one of the co-founders. Daniel already said that I'm kind of like very unfundable and originally from Namibia, born and raised. And, we kind of like asked a lot of the moderators like what it is that you guys wanted to hear about. So when they said, they wanted to hear about kind of like our entrepreneurial experiences, I had to dig deep and see what is it exactly that is there. So I'm going to tell you guys a little bit. When I actually started looking back at my background, it has been very deeply nested inside of me. When I was 6 years old, I started selling popcorn with my sister at a swimming pool. What a bad idea.
In
I
Africa.
mean, there was like popcorn cones everywhere. When I was at the age of 10, I started a small car wash with some friends. We went out, we washed all of the local cars, and for each and every car that they washed, I took a little bit of a commission in order to feed my addiction for arcade games. Playing around with a lot of technology, I was, always kind of like pulling apart radios, looking at like capacitors, transistors, and just putting the stuff back together for the fun of it. And when the time actually came that I had to enroll myself
did they work
into
after you put it back?
Sometimes.
Okay.
Yeah. But that's why I wanted to find out a little bit more about it. But when
This is new for me. I didn't hear this before, so this.
It's usually
I'm
him that's
learning
talking,
something every day.
Exactly.
Okay. Thanks.
When I
What radios were there?
analog ones, not
Okay.
digital. So,
Interesting.
yeah. Thank you, Daniel. When the time came that I actually had to enroll myself into high school, I would choose a technical high school just due to the fact that I had such a love for technology. And one of the main things that I would always kind of like come across, even at that stage, was the fact that a lot of my friends were sitting down and they were kind of like saying, the only thing that we would essentially sit and talk about is like computers and how expensive they are. So for me, that actually presented an opportunity. And what I would do is I would go to all of our local distributors and basically order the bare bone boxes, order the motherboards, software, everything, put that together and basically start selling all of the computers at a fraction of the price for what these guys could get it for. After the age of 12 or 13, I actually took a bit of a hiatus from my entrepreneurial career, but did my first real startup at the age of 25. I traveled a little bit. I ended up in Australia, and what would have been, that's why I've got this weird accent, like British, Australian, African as well. So by the time that I actually got to Australia, I got headhunted and I worked for a third-party Apple retailer. Before I knew it, myself and the CEO of this company had more in common than what we ever thought. I had a love for aviation, he had a love for aviation, and at this stage he was actually looking to buy a small aircraft. The one thing that we saw is that the only company out there that would actually allow him to buy an aircraft at that stage was a A1 newspaper that was distributed once a month. It was extremely expensive to advertise. And the process in order to get your advert up there was really tedious. You had to take your old photos, and you basically had to send it into these guys, and they would then prepare it and send it out on a monthly basis. Then when we saw the opportunity that actually arose, the fact that there was 33,000 aircraft traded on a yearly basis, we thought, why is there only one particular way in how this can be done? So we very quickly came up with a cloud-based solution where we would focus on those 3 pain points. We made it accessible 24/7, we made it very affordable for people to advertise, and we made it very easy to use. And what I would find is essentially myself out over the next year and a half being at airports.
It's photoshopped? Is that you?
Yeah, that's me.
Okay.
Yeah. What I would find is essentially over the next year and a half, I would be out at kind of like airports on 2 to 3 times a week, having had the opportunity to fly in some of the most amazing aircrafts, Apache helicopters, Mustangs, DC-3s, DC-4s, and I'm still alive that I can actually do this, so it's quite a good opportunity. But then, having been in Australia and actually being from from Namibia, there's such a big time difference, and I started feeling that I was losing touch with my family. It's about 10 hours difference, and I just thought, the first opportunity that I have in order to go to Europe, I'll basically jump on top of that. I talked with the CEO of the company, and we had kind of like a deal and said that when I go over, we're going to try and start this up in Europe as well. Little did I know that I would get screwed out of my own business. And
So
essentially
this is lesson number 1, right?
This is lesson number 1. After
Right
no, actually
context?
lesson number 2.
Which was the first one?
Don't sell popcorn at
Okay.
a swimming pool. So,
No, but lesson number 2 then, or the real lesson number
Yeah.
1, is right context, right?
exactly, yeah.
Yeah.
Have everything written down on paper, like have everything documented along the way you go. But I mean, fate led me to this gentleman here on my left side, and I'm going to let him kind of like talk a little bit more about himself.
Okay, thanks. So my story is extremely crooked. So I moved to Sweden when I was 12, and we fled communism, and we came to Sweden, and it was kind of tough. You know, my family didn't really made it in Sweden. They were high-paid engineers in Romania, and they became janitors and orderlies in Sweden. You know, the standard story also here, I would assume. My dad told me from day one, look, you will never be employed. Make sure that you create a career for yourself, which I couldn't because I didn't have good grades. I started to go to language courses and started to learn Latin at high school. And of course, nobody pays you if you know Latin. There's not a degree. But what was lucky, though, is that through Latin, I got an automatic slot into university because they gave you guaranteed slots if you were a guy speaking Latin, because usually only girls went to Latin. So
So you were the minority.
I was a double minority, actually,
Okay.
a guy and yeah. So I came in and started Latin at university, which I hated because it was extremely tough. And then I switched to art history. And my dad once again said, look, nobody's going to employ you if you learn art history. But I got a job. I started to sell paintings at this gallery, and I was extremely happy. I got €5 an hour, you know, under the table, no taxes. And I thought it was the best job ever. I was selling paintings of ducks and birds and moose. That was quite good. I sold for like €10,000 a month. But then I moved to Stockholm and started my career in an art institution, which was kind of famous. I started as an intern. I basically came in and said, look, there's no way for me to come into this. I don't have any degrees. I don't have any tickets. I just have a lot of hard working stamina. So just give me a shot to be here as an intern. I had 5 weeks to prove myself. And after 5 weeks, I said, look, we're going to employ you on a half-time basis. We're going to pay you €500 a month. Are you happy? And I was like, oof, I'm really happy. And I was. But slowly and steadily, by just working extremely hard, I decided this is something for me. And I became really good at my job. And I started to do exhibitions, extremely complex contemporary art exhibitions about contemporary art, which is like you have to explain something insane to art connoisseurs and to a grandma and to a kid at the same time, which made me good at taking complex stuff and explaining them to a lot of people. I decided something, though. I decided when I started that day I will not perform as good anymore and I will not love my job anymore. I should quit. And this is something that a lot of people don't do. So a lot of people get stuck in dead-end jobs because they don't dare to quit, or they don't put a goal to themselves to say, look, I will never become a boring civil servant or something else. But for me, it was crucial. So one day I was driving my car and I was listening on the radio speaking, and it was an interview, and I got so bored, so I actually shut it down. And I was like, whoa, what just happened? I'm not passionate anymore. I'm bored about myself speaking on the radio. This is something that I worked quite a lot towards to come to that point that actually I get interviewed by radio. So I realized that, look, I'm done. So I decided to quit my job, and I quit it on the day that I became the head of the institution where I started as an intern. And this is one of the toughest fields to enter. It's like it's impossible to enter the art field, especially the contemporary art field. And I made it all the way to the top and I quit, and I didn't know what to do. And this was in the summer of 2008. You guys, if you were me being in a business environment, you would have known that you don't quit your job in the summer of 2008 because
Financial crisis.
some kind of financial crisis is happening. In September 1, when I sat down, I actually paid my first office €200, which was an insane amount of money to pay, money I didn't have. I was reading the papers about the Lehman crash. I was like, what is this? And I had huge problems to get clients. So what I did at that point is that I created with my co-founder at that point a video viewing tool. So basically, you know, online today, when you watch videos or when you browse the internet, you basically flip the page like in a newspaper. You still do that. But a screen gives you the possibility to go into depth and into the sides, and you can actually, there's a huge universe out there which we don't use. It's still the flat side, and you switch the page. Even on YouTube, you switch the page, even though it's video. So we created a viewing tool, and we thought we could sell it. My first client, a huge hotel chain in the city of Stockholm, they said, look, we're firing people. We love you, but we can't pay you because we're firing people. We can't motivate to pay you for this integration of the video player. And I said, fine. I didn't want to accept a no because I did need a client. I need a logo on my site. I needed the press release to go out and say that this chain chose me. So I told them, look, don't pay me, but still let me do the work for you, but still pay me in hotel nights. And they gave me 6 hotel nights per year for free in a luxury suite if I did this thing for them. So for like 2.5 years, I had like a lot of nights at the hotel, which was awesome. But the best thing was that I got a logo, yeah? I got the rights to use that Bernd Salonger and the Dabber are doing business. So I went out and did a huge press release. And when I mean huge, I mean huge. I sent out spam to like 25,000 companies.
He still does it today.
I still do it today.
Yeah.
One company woke up, this was Yale Locks, Assa Abloy, a huge multi-billion conglomerate, and said, look, we also want you to do this for us because we just created 75 films about safety. And I went to them and I proposed them. Before I went in, I knew that I wanted to sell this video player to them for 2,000 euros. That was my price, if I didn't want to lose money on it. Just before I entered the meeting, I called my co-founder and said, look, I'm going to sell it for 1,500 euros, right? And he's like, look, we're going to lose money, he says. And it's like, we need Assa Abloy, we need the money, but we need, once again, I need the logo and the prestige so I can go out. I sit in the meeting, I had the best hour of my life, the best pitch I ever gave. We said, yes, let's do this. And he asked me, what's the price? And I say 1,000 euros. And he says, oh, that's expensive. And I was like, what? A multi-billion company telling me that 1,000 euros is expensive. The problem lies somewhere else. So I told him, look, if you don't like this, tell me. If you don't like me, tell me. If you don't like my product, tell me. But you can't say 1,000 euros is expensive. Sorry, 1,000 is expensive. And he says, well, fine. He understands my point. And we agree for them to pay 1,000. And just before I left the meeting, he turns to the secretary and says, can you check the exchange rate? He was talking dollars and I was talking crowns at that point. So I actually invoiced him 67,000 crowns, which is 6,500 euros. And I realized the crucial thing at that point is that you are not the one pricing your product, but the market prices your product. And if somebody is willing to pay for something, then that's the price. That was a crucial lesson. And we moved on and we continued to do work for clients. And that's how I met Arno. And it was, a feat of luck or bad luck for you.
Yeah, I mean...
but for me, it was luck.
Depends which way you look at it, obviously.
We were looking for an awesome coder. So we put out the tentacles and asked a lot of people, look, we need a good back-end coder. And one firm called me back and said, look, we have this guy. He's awesome, but he's African. Not really. They said, no. They said, but he doesn't speak Swedish. And he's African.
And
I was like, oh, shit.
Yeah.
But the thing is that I used to work with Congolese people, and I love Congo, and I think it's like I love the mentality of the African mindset that you think outside the box and you improvise and you take 2 sticks and you create fire, right?
Yes.
So I was like,
listen
wow.
to the drum beats in the night and the elephants and everything in your backyard.
So on Thursday at 12 o'clock or whatever, we had an interview, and I was expecting a huge guy with a like old-fashioned computer. I don't know, my mindset was, I was waiting for a big black guy with an old computer. Because you are prejudiced, everybody's prejudiced. You have your mindset, you have ideas on how the world should be, and if somebody tells you an African coder is coming, you expect an African coder, and you don't know what an African coder is. Now you know.
It's been a bad summer.
Yeah, and then we met. And we started working on a really complex product. So that product was a site where everybody could store videos and video messages. And in case you would die, that message would be sent out to people. So you could tell your loved ones that you love them. You could tell your wife your password. You could ask your boss to go fuck
himself, yes.
Himself. The problem with the site was extremely complex, is that you can build that, and a lot of people built that, but the specs was that it has to last for 50 years. Because if you use the site, you will not die in the next 50 years. Knock on wood. And a lot of people will not die, and you don't want to send out a lot of video messages on accident, right?
Especially not to your boss at that stage, if you have a high-paying job.
Yeah. And we asked Arno, and Arno actually coded that because He didn't think about it. He said, look, this shouldn't be complex. I can build that. It's not a problem. We didn't ask for permission, and we built it.
Yeah, yeah, we did.
So how are we on time? Are we too slow? Okay,
We'll
wrap
speed it up a little bit.
Speed
Okay.
up, okay. So let's speed up a bit. Yeah, and then we launched another project and another.
And now we're done. No, I'm
No.
kidding.
But we did a lot of these projects, and eventually in 2010, we got fed up of working for clients, and we had this idea that we were operating, but money stopped. We didn't have funding. And in 2010, a phenomenon in the US started called crowdfunding. There was a site in New York that just launched funding musicians and funding arts through crowdfunding. And we thought, why can't we use this? So we turned to the US and we said, we want to use Kickstarter to fund one of our ideas. And they said, no, you're not Americans. We can't use the system. We asked a friend who was American, who is American, can you start a project for us and we can run it? And he said, yes. And we uploaded it, we gone through everything, and they said still, no, you can't use this because your idea is not valuable for the American community. And we got so upset.
Actually, I think the Swedish word is like förbannat.
Yeah. And we got upset, and we got mad, and we got sad, but we got extremely creative. We thought, look, if they turn us down, and we are extremely awesome, right? Right? So if we're extremely awesome, they turn us down, most likely they turn other awesome people down. So what if we bring this phenomenon to Sweden? And this is, do you want to go through that?
Yeah, sure. I mean, you know, basically, as Daniel already said, you know, the fact that we got kind of like denied by these guys presented another opportunity for us. And you'll see that with both our kind of like backgrounds, you know, as soon as there has been the slightest little gap in order to do something, we've always kind of like jumped on top of it. That doesn't matter if I'm Namibian, doesn't matter if he's Romanian, but there's always been that entrepreneurial trait inside of us to just kind of like put our heads down, doesn't matter what the barriers are, and just go and do it. So essentially we launched the first version of FundedByMe. You know, we put up a basic page. We created a video with a lot of like Daniel's chest hair sticking out at that stage, and a lot of people commented on it. No, sorry.
No, they said.
A lot of love. No,
So
a lot of love.
No, but we love your message, but we're getting distracted by the chest hair.
Yeah. We connected it to a PayPal button, and we essentially put up a bunch of rewards and said that, you know, for like 100 crowns, we'll basically give people hugs. And by the way, if there's anyone that supported us and that they need a hug afterwards, just come and see us in the corner. We'll sort that out. We had some T-shirts, we had some lectures and everything, and in 60 days, you know, we were able to put together 11,000 euros, and for us that was a shitload of money.
Yeah, that was really hard because we basically went out to the world and said, look, we want to launch something strange by doing something strange, and if you help us, we will give you a hug. Nobody knew what crowdfunding was. Like, nobody knew what Kickstarter was. Nobody knew what we wanted to do. But we said, look, we're going to create a site where people can upload their ideas or companies, and if you pay them, they will give you something back. Maybe. People didn't get that, but they loved us. They loved our energy. And we raised money, but extremely slowly. And what we learned is, of course, by doing crowdfunding to launch a crowdfunding site, we learned the trade. We learned how tough it is. But also we realized what our clients will go through. So that made us extremely credible once we got clients, because we told them, look, we've done this. We know how tough it is. We know how tough it is to start a campaign. We know what you're going through because we have just gotten through that. We are coming from the same spot as you. We are, you know, unfundables.
Yeah, we essentially ate our own dog food, if you can put it that way.
Yeah.
You know, we gave ourselves 30 days to build a product. Daniel, being his extreme self, importing his like sent email box, created a nice little press release and sent it out to all of his friends and saying that, you know, we're launching something in 30 days. And I alone had to create that, so that was another challenge in itself. But we did it. We launched it. And a very well-known person, you know, Reid Hoffman once said that if you're not embarrassed about your first version of your product that you've launched too late.
Yeah. This is lesson number 2.
Yes, during the process.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Yeah, so another story then. So one of our first success stories is basically a guy like you, a girl like you. We ask a few people, what are your dreams to do after this? And of course, a lot of people want to become consultants, right? How many people want to be consultants after this?
You can put up your hands, it's okay.
Half the room, let's say more. So a lot of people think they want to be consultants. And this guy was a consultant, very well paid, nice suit, nice car, good job. But he hated his life. which a lot of people will do once they are employed by somebody. Once you work for somebody else, you don't work for yourself. You help other people build their dreams, which is fine, and it fits certain types of personalities, but not everybody. Like, the equivalent of this school in Stockholm 5 years ago, 5% of the people wanted to quit, they wanted to start companies after the school. Now it's 70% wants to start companies because we live in a startup environment and timing. But this guy, he had a dream, right? And everybody has a dream. His was to be a burger chef, to run his own burger joint. And this was before the cool burgers that you know about. This was when we only knew about McDonald's or the Kobe beef truffle burgers. He managed to convince Hellmann's Mayonnaise, which is a mayonnaise company, to pay for a trip so he could go to the US and benchmark the market and try out 60 awesome burgers in 30 days and then come back to Sweden and launch this. He goes to the bank and says, I need 100,000 euros to launch. And the bank says, wake up, you're not a chef. He goes to the government and the government says, we will not give you money because you're not a chef, you are a consultant. You know how many burger joints fail? Then he comes to us. And we were extremely early at that point, and he wanted to raise 100,000 euros. And said, look, you can't do that. It's too early. But think about mobilizing your future fans instead. And he thought about it, and he found 185 people who were willing to pay him 15 euros to get a free burger in the future if he buys a burger. So the guy does a double sale.
Once the place opens up.
If the place opens up.
Yes.
So he does a double sale on an extremely expensive burger, half a year at least, before he even might launch the place. And 185 people is quite a lot. It's almost the entire this room. Just look around. All these people became brand ambassadors. They were looking forward to the opening. And once it did open, all people who came, they brought friends. The burger was awesome. He got good press. Extreme long waiting hours. You had to wait 1 hour in line to get a burger. In the cold, in the rain.
In the snow.
In the snow. And the word, it became viral. People loved the fact that somebody dared to open a burger joint through crowdfunding.
Like even we thought that we could go there and like jump the queue, but it didn't happen. Like
No.
we had to wait in the rain.
Yeah.
So.
And now he's extremely famous. He is one of the first people who, one of our first successes. He made quite a lot of money first year, employed 14 people the first year. He had a 17% profit margin on 2.1 million euros alone. And he's living the dream. He is now a TV celebrity. He is now a book writer. People fly from Hong Kong to eat at his place. And he basically said, look, I'm going to quit and start something else, which is awesome. Because, let's put it like this, if he would have failed with the crowdfunding and not raised the funds and the audience wouldn't want the burger, he would know from day one that he didn't have to quit his job. He didn't have to borrow a huge amount of money from the bank, and he didn't needed to take the risk. Now he had a market validation. He had 187 customers. He could go back to the bank and say, look, I have market validation. You should actually support me.
And he had the strongest tool, word of mouth.
Yeah.
You know, which kind of like brings us on to one of our next projects as well. Just talking a little bit more.
Sure. This is not our next project, though. It's Oculus Rift.
Oh, okay. This is not ours, but this is also a very famous.
Yeah. So we're going to just give you an example why the donation-based crowdfunding, still time? Okay, 5 minutes. So this is one of Kickstarter's most famous projects. It's basically Oculus Rift. A few guys said, look, we're going to build a new virtual reality glass. So like tens of thousands of people backed the project. I was one of those people. And I was supposed to get an early kit. I backed this with $300. I backed flipping burgers with $15. 15 euros, I got a free burger. I'm really happy about that. In this case, I was supposed to get an early access. The company then got sold to Facebook for $2 billion, quite fast. And I was a supporter in this case, and I was a supporter in the previous case, right? I was not expecting to get a profit or a share or anything. But I would have, if I could have, if I would have had shares in Oculus Rift for $300, when Facebook would have bought them, I would have made $145,000. And I'm not bitter, no, don't get me wrong. I knew what I was doing, but it would have been fun to have the option to actually invest and own shares in this company. And that leads us to what we actually are doing now in FundedByMe.
Yeah, I mean, the thing that we essentially saw is that ownership is a lot more worth what kind of like people are looking for in Scandinavia. And having involved a lot of our customers along the way, we really saw that. And for us, it's very important to kind of like work on something which I like to call the feedback iteration loop. You know, once you put something out there, you talk to your customers, you have a couple of ideas, they give you enough feedback, and then essentially you just keep massaging that product or that service until it gets to a stage where it's so good. And this was essentially when we sat down with a guy who really wanted to break that many rules, where you wanted to send like beer through the post in Sweden, where everything is like moderated through Systembolaget. We just couldn't do it anymore. So that's when we launched equity crowdfunding. And
sorry to interrupt you, Arno, but here's the fun part.
it happens often. It's okay.
Us being non-traditional entrepreneurs and not having a business background, in this case, or let's say legal background, we were not legal kids, it proved as a positive, because we saw a problem and we fixed that by building something. And then we asked for permission from the Finansinspektionen and the government and other people. And they said, look, what you built is illegal, you can't launch that, but if you make small iterations, you actually can do what you want. And usually, a lot of people get stuck in the ways of how it is. They have learned something who has been taught by somebody who has learned it by somebody else. And I think whatever you do in life, make sure that you always rethink it. Like, does it have to be like this? Because everything in the society, especially legislations and societies, change when somebody pushes it. They never change by itself. Like, if you look at the regulators, they are in an extremely tough position. If they make a decision and they're wrong, they're going to get fired or scrutinized by the press. If they make a decision they're right, they will never get a promotion or a bonus. So for regulators, they're in a huge problem. They don't want to take risks because they're not incited to take risk. So that's why regulators will never change legislation. They will never push legislation. It has to be pushed from below, from entrepreneurs or people who actually want to see change. And of course, the world has changed in the last 10 years due to social media. So we do talk differently, we do behave differently. So the laws of the world telling us how we can raise funds and how we can go out to the world and ask them to invest in us have changed dramatically, while legislation is still from 99. If we're lucky, 99. Yes, so I'm going to tell you, so we can skip this if you want, but this is a cool story which I'm really proud about.
I'll get to
There's a lot of people who think that you want 2 investors, right? Or 3 or 5. People who you can go with a business plan and you can convince them over a nice dinner or nice table. Well, it's not true, because the thing is that if you mobilize a lot of people, they become an army behind you. We have 450 shareholders. That's an army. If we call 450 people and we ask them to do something, that's a huge momentum. And in this case, we found out I read an article about a woman who had an ice cream company, and she was alone. And she was complaining about the fact that she could not grow. She didn't have any shareholders at that point. And I called her and I said, look, I think that an ice cream company and crowdfunding is a match made in heaven. I think there's a lot of people out there who would love to own shares in an ice cream company, who could become the next Ben & Jerry. And she's like, do you really think that? And we convinced her to use FundedByMe, and 1 month later, she had 148 investors. These 148 investors started to go to their local stores and said, why don't you have Mormor Magdas glass? They asked their local restaurants. They started to tell their friends. They started to go to the factory. And now suddenly this woman has an army of people behind her who are shareholders in the company and thus vested. They need to make sure that this company grows. They will never buy a Ben & Jerry's again, because they are shareholders in Mormor Magdas glass. And I love that fact that she dared to rethink the way you look at investors, and investors love the fact that they could become shareholders in an ice cream company. A lot of people actually bought shares to their kids, because it's a cool thing to say to your kid that, look, now you are a shareholder.
You're not getting ice cream, you're getting shares instead?
Yeah.
Okay. That's a nice excuse to have, yeah. No, but I think the nice thing about this also is the fact that, in a traditional setup, as Daniel mentioned, you would have gone to maybe 1 or 2 investors, but due to the fact that we have the platform and the technology available, we've been able to connect, 148 investors from 5 different countries. That is a lot of countries when you're a small player in a city that is not something like Stockholm or not Copenhagen. I mean, it's essentially what it boils down to. I think the next one we're just going to kind of like skip over very quickly. And then we're going to talk about...
Yeah, so eventually as a company, you always are put into a position like, okay, how do we actually grow? What's the future? And my role in the company is to think, ahead, to be at least 2 years ahead. And we realized that not everybody is ready to invest in a company and take a 5-year risk on a potential exit, but still want to be part of the crowdfunding phenomenon. So we launched loans just to piss off the banks a bit. We benchmarked on bank loans, but we made them faster and cooler. This woman, you see her, she sits in her wheelchair. She invented a Segway-based wheelchair, which is basically the future of Segways. Suddenly it's cool to sit in a wheelchair. I tried it, I love it. If I ever, knock on wood, can't walk anymore, I would love to have one of these seats. But what we realized in her case is that we found a lot of people from a lot of countries who actually wanted to lend money to her. Borrow money with an interest, with a repayment, to taking a risk, but also helping her ahead. And actually, out of 74 people who lent her money, 22% were non-Swedes, which I think is extremely awesome. So I mean, not from Sweden, from a different country. And that's something that we have become extremely good at and proud of. FundedByMe is right now the biggest crowdfunding portal in the Nordics, but also we are better than any European crowdfunding portal on cross-border investments. We have investors from 74 different countries who have spent money on our site, which is unheard of because, this is quite a lot of money that we bring in to the system, new money. And of course, the average investment is $6,000. It's quite huge. It's far more than donation-based crowdfunding. And this product loans is something that we think it could be extremely big because it's an algorithm-driven product, extremely easy to understand because you look at risk, profit, and time, and then you decide if you want to help this entrepreneur or not. And we launched this not because we were not happy with our original product, but because we had to think, what is the future of what we're doing? And a lot of people already seem to like it.
Yeah, I mean, we've had, thus far we've had 0 defaults and one that's already paid back, and we've closed, we've gone actually from the first case that took in about 10,000 euros to the next one that took in 110,000 euros. So that's been a pretty big gap. But if you look at us as like FundedByMe as a team, and this is our last slide, by the way. As Daniel mentioned, on paper we're kind of like unfundable. Romanian art major, African coder, but we've been able to attract some really cool people from very diverse backgrounds. People that used to work for some of the biggest brand names in, I guess, all of our history right here. And
Yeah, we had a guy who quit Facebook, and he was like a top head of Facebook, and he quit to join us, which is insane. I don't know why he does that, but we're glad that he does that.
Exactly.
People quit Spotify, they quit Microsoft to join us, which is, it's kind of cool because...
Say something about you at least.
You maybe.
Okay, well, great. No, but I mean, from our side, we've, essentially we've been able to fund over hundreds of companies and create 750 jobs, which I think is fantastic.
I say it's 1,000 jobs because that's 750 in Sweden. But so
he always changes the figures.
No, but to summarize, I think looking back, and I think what we symbolize, what we stand for, and what we become, like driving force, at least in the markets that we are operating, and we are right now in 10 markets, including 2 in Asia, is that we have showed people, and especially people like you, that the traditional way of building a company, the traditional way to fund a company, and the traditional way to invest in a company has changed. Global access to deal flow to startups is now through crowdfunding. The next Facebook, the next Minecraft, the next Spotify, the next whatever company will choose crowdfunding. They will at least consider it. If they choose our site, I would be extremely proud. If not, it's up to them.
Go for the second best.
No, but the option is not anymore, is this a novelty or is it cool, but is it rather, how can I use it the best? And this is something that I love a lot. When we started this company, we'd never said that we were a Romanian art major and an African coder. We said we are Swedish and we're extremely good at what we're doing. Please trust us, we told them. Then they did. And then eventually they said, look, this is never going to work in Sweden because it's an American phenomenon. And we proved it. And now suddenly nobody asks anymore, what is FundedByMe kind of a site, but rather they say, what cases do we have and how can I make sure that I invest in them? Or they ask, how can we use your site to reach a lot of investors? Yeah. Sorry to yeah. No, we got so many questions. We got so many questions, so we have to.
So I think we should. Yeah. Oh, it is the end of the presentation.
Yes.
Thank you. Yeah,
I could have talked so much more.
I know. I kind of sense that you're not just an awesome couple. You're also kind of cute couple. Very twin-like.
This is husband and wife. This is.
And just a tiny bit. I think Arno needs to speak a bit louder. Can you? Is that correct? Yeah. No. Nobody cares. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I think we should move on with the questions and maybe dig a bit more into like the business itself. You mentioned you had 450 shareholders. Can you just shortly, what was the owner structure of FundedByMe today?
Yeah. So up until we launched equity crowdfunding, we were alone. And our first proposal of investment was one guy that Arno found through Twitter. And we went to Norway to meet him, and we liked him a lot. And then he came to Sweden, and we convinced our board, which wasn't a board at that point, was one guy, to allow him to become a shareholder. And everything looked good, right? The classic traditional way of funding a company. And then we went out drinking beer, and we drank quite a lot of beer. And he showed his true colors. And it was not a nice guy. And he told me while drunk that he's going to fire me tomorrow. The problem is that he actually sat in a power position, right? Because we needed his money. We also put him in a power position because we went to the government and said, look, we are raising money here. And if you can match that, then we can have double. And the government said yes. And we were like, 1 week from bankruptcy. So we had to accept this guy. And when I woke up in this morning hangover and knowing that he was not a nice person, I didn't know what to do. And I went to Arno. Arno said, look, trust your gut feeling. I went to my advisor. He said, trust your gut feeling. And we decided not to go with him. And we called the government and said, look, everything is crumbling apart because we're not accepting this guy. And we didn't accept him, which was a good thing. And eventually we got 3 people on board. And those 3 became 10, and they became more and more. And then we did crowdfunding on our own platform twice. Extremely successful. So that's why we have 450 shareholders.
And today you own?
I have roughly 20% of the company.
Arno?
It's between 10 and 11.
Yeah. Okay.
But we have quite a lot of voting rights, so we control the company still. And this is fine because the company's valuation has increased dramatically. So now we have little in a big company, which is good. And if you look, for instance, at, let's say, Spotify, the heads of Spotify, they might have 5-6% left, but they still control the company. And this is something that you have to think about. To build something big, you need to have, forces behind you and make sure that you share that with good people rather than bad people.
And it's okay, you have a lot of shareholders in, but don't lose control of the company as well?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a big a keynote thing to take as well. But let's have the first question that got many votes about your business strategy as well, because now you explained a lot about FundedByMe, but what actually sets you apart from other competitors in the market like Rocket, Hub, Fundable, etc.? What is the unique selling points for FundedByMe?
Yeah, so regarding Kickstarter and Indiegogo, we are extremely different. We don't do donation-based crowdfunding so much anymore. We still do it, but we are strong in equity crowdfunding. They don't do equity crowdfunding. They might, and they're going to be extremely US-centric. We are global. We've been global from day one. We're extremely strong in Northern Europe and Asia. We have a hub in Malaysia and Singapore. And we've been successful, more than successful than any of these on cross-border investments. Yeah. So that's a huge difference. Rocket Hub, Fundable, and others, they are not really doing quite a lot, but they're also US-centric. A lot of stuff will happen soon, though. The US has just passed a law on the 30th of October, saying that you can now address people through Facebook and say, buy shares in my company. This is historic. We have not done this in 80 years, since the late Depression. We have not been able to go out to the general public and say, buy shares in my company. You could only go to an accredited or sophisticated investor. So now everything is going to change. What's positive for us is that change, because it's going to drive and push the market, but it's also going to be extremely US-centric. And we have decided to not be US-centric. We decided to be extremely strong in Europe, extremely strong in the Nordics, and have a huge hub in Asia.
And then let's move to the other question about how you actually make money. Oh,
yeah.
Oh, it disappeared.
How do we make money? So it's extremely.
We'll take it anyway. How do you make money? I mean, you had the loan thing, the interest rates as well, where people could put their savings.
No, we sit in the same boat as the entrepreneurs. So we make sure that we are extremely motivated, and the entrepreneurs feel that we are motivated. So we have success-based fee. If you make if you raise 100,000 through us, we will charge you 8%. If you raise 0, we charge you 8% of 0.
If you charge always 8%.
Always 8%. Yeah. So we are depending on people succeeding. Having said that, half of the cases don't succeed, and that's extremely frustrating, but it's still part of the game.
In loans, though, it's a little bit different.
Yes, in loans it's different.
So there we actually, we take 4% of it, of the success fee, and then for every repayment there is a 1% service fee. So that's why we saw that it will become such a big part of the business. You know, if a company takes a loan for 2, 3, 4 years, we will actually get paid for the next 2, 3, 4 years. So.
And when people put their savings with you, which is the kind of the loan program, how much interest do they get?
So the last product gave 11.8% per year.
11.8.
So accumulated over 3 years, because the 3 years loan is 34.7. So if the case doesn't repay the loan, you might make 34%. It's slightly better than the banks, right?
So, which
But
is
have
kind
in
of
mind,
surprising.
this loan was guaranteed by the entrepreneur. So only if she dies and the company goes bankrupt, then you default. So we assessed the risk to be 1.2%. This was an A- company. So we knew that the risk of default for this company was 1.2%. And this is something that we flagged. So look, the upside is 11.8 on a yearly basis. The downside that you take a risk of 1.2. But you still have the repayment guarantee.
And without getting too technical, this just leads to one question, which surprises me, haven't been up there, but I will ask it anyway. What is the future of banks? Where is banks in financing corporations 20 years from now, 10 years from now?
Yeah.
How many banks are sitting in here?
How many?
Let's just
No,
see
but
what the questions
the
are.
future of the banks is extremely simple. So banks are right now, they don't really care about us yet because we're too
That's
small.
a mistake.
The
right,
entire,
Daniel?
the entire
Yeah.
business of crowdfunding is really too small still. But people think, so I think it's like 11.8 billion this year, and people think it could be up to 1,000 billion by 2020. Banks don't care because they make money still, and they are motivated by this. What they do care quite a lot about is that they see that we are disruptors, and we teach people to take control of their money. Rather than the money sitting still in the account, we tell them, look, make sure that this money works for you. So banks are now starting to pay attention. So actually, we are in strong talks right now with a bank that actually wants to invest in us.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Which bank is that?
Can't say.
It's a secret bank.
The bank of
I
secrecy.
kind of figured you would say
I'm
that.
going to tell you in a month when we go public with the news.
Yeah? And that's okay with you? That's not kind of a problem for your DNA that now you go to bed with the banks? I thought that
Well,
was what you were
they get
fighting.
10% of the companies. So for us, we get muscles and we get power to do what we want, but still we don't lose control. And I think the right bank, we don't have a problem with working with the right way. What we don't like is people who are not willing to change, people who are too set in their mindset. But if you look at banks, they have a huge problem right now. There's a new rule called Basel III, who tells the bank that basically they can't lend out money to small businesses, which helps us a lot. In the UK government said to a bank, this is a rule and legislation, is that if you turn down a business in the UK as a bank, you need to give them an option. You need to point them to an option, which has helped the crowd lending business in the UK quite a lot. And we think that's going to happen in Europe too soon, that the banks need to find alternative vehicles for certain loans or certain investments, and we hope they're going to use us for that, or we know they're going to use us or similar for that.
All right. So now let's turn to some career advice and to how to be an entrepreneur and do a successful startup or fail and do it again. I don't know. How many raised your hands when Arno and Daniel asked you if you planned to be an entrepreneur yourself? Can we do it one more time? Yeah, please, come on. It was 70% in Stockholm, I think. Didn't you
This
say
is
that?
like
Yeah.
roughly
Roughly.
15%.
All right, but
Couple
one of the
years
questions relates to that, and that is if you want to be an entrepreneur, should you gain experience in the industry after finishing a master, or just start out right away?
So getting experience is of course good, but it doesn't. There's no better experience than actually doing stuff, and especially if you do it for yourself. Like when I quit my job, every day I worked gave me and myself experience. I climbed upwards and onwards every day. In a line of business, you help your company and your employer to gain experience. So you might get experience, you might get a bit of a cash to actually dare to quit, but you end up into another problem, which means that you might start buying a house or a car and stuff and become comfortable or have a lifestyle that doesn't allow you to become an entrepreneur. So my advice is that you should never do something that you're not in control of. On the other hand, quitting your job and make sure that you take the leap is one of the best things ever, because you can always go back to being employed. And also, we know that employers prefer people or like people who actually started or tested to be an entrepreneur. So my advice, when I quit my job, it was the scariest thing I ever done because I didn't know what I was doing. Looking back, it was the best thing I ever done. But it's been extremely scary.
I think I only had a job once in my life, and it was the worst decision ever. I've always worked for myself, so that is the flexibility that it brings is fantastic. But it might not be for everyone.
No, it doesn't fit everyone, because it's really scary. Even those people who actually are born to be entrepreneurs have to have a mindset of, okay, I'm going to accept the fact that I'm going to be a duck. And you know what a duck does? A duck looks calm on the surface, but paddles like mad underneath. That's what we are. We are scared shitless every day because we have to pay people's salaries. On the other hand, you are allowed to become, your master of your own dreams. But sometimes you will build stuff that doesn't work. My first company or the first clients I had, that didn't work out. So I had to pivot. I had to really think, okay, what am I really doing? How should I price this, and where should I go with this? and eventually it became FundedByMe, and even that has changed course a few times.
So if you had to come with an advice, that would be to watch out for the fixed costs in your lifestyle before starting, or that was one that I heard, but other good advice?
Yeah. No, I would definitely say try to be an entrepreneur. Worst case scenario is that you learn something.
Yeah.
Yeah, that wouldn't be too bad. So, if you had to start FundedByMe again, what would you do differently?
Nothing, I think.
You were quiet. Yeah.
No, I think we've done a million mistakes, but all mistakes took us here, and we learned quite a lot through them. So I wouldn't change anything. Maybe I would have hired more people earlier, like our first employee was the hardest one ever. We had to hire a girl, and we had like money in the bank for like 6 weeks, and it was really scary. But it was also the best decision ever because it put us in a mindset. Look, you have to pay her first, then the rent, and then yourself, and that made us grow instantly mentally. So I would have hired more people faster, I think.
Obviously not with that bankroll, but
no,
just if we had a bigger bankroll, yeah.
And the next question, we already discussed that before going in here. What is the plan? What have FundedByMe achieved 5 years from now? The exit plan? Will you disclose it with us?
Yeah,
as well?
so of course, we didn't build this company for exit, but we have 450 shareholders, and we need to make sure that they make money. So of course, we have an IPO dream by at least end of 2017, and we are at least prepared to be IPO ready at that point. If we do IPO or not, we have to see. But the company has to be IPO ready by end of 2017. But
does
for us,
your new bank investor, do they agree in the IPO plan?
Sorry?
The new bank investor, the new secret bank investor, are they agreeing on the IPO plan?
Yes and no. Well, they like the idea of being IPO ready, which means that you have all ducks in a row and you have the right people on board and the right mindset. But I don't think a bank wants to do an exit in 15 months or in 24 months. I think they're in it for the long term, and this is what we're looking at. Even if we would do an IPO, we will still continue to do what we're doing, just make sure that our shareholders are liquid if they want to sell their shares.
All right, we'll get the next one. There we go. Yeah, so equity crowdfunding has been criticized for being a very risky investment opportunity. How do you see that in your company?
Yeah, of course. Every investment is a risky opportunity. If somebody tells you otherwise, you should be extremely careful.
If it's too good to be
There's
true,
no investment opportunity that's not risky. Then, of course, high risk is also high reward, but you should always assume that it's 100% loss on equity crowdfunding investments. Having said that, you can mitigate risk, right? By understanding the business, by being allowed to have access to the business. Like if I invest money on the stock exchange, I have zero access and zero influence. I'm just a sitting duck and I'm playing roulette. I hope that people are doing the jobs. Well, in equity crowdfunding, I can influence. I can help the CEO. I can help the market. I can ask for advice. I can actually make a phone call. So I would actually say that, yes, the risk is high, but you can control it quite a lot. And if you really want, you can even be involved in that company.
I think also the thing with equity crowdfunding is the fact that because you're dividing the slice of the pie between so many people, you can actually invest into more companies, which means that you can mitigate the risk. So it's not like you're going to put your life savings into something and then lose it all at once, but you know, they might be the 8 out of 10 rule, which essentially comes into play, that 8 out of 10 of them are essentially going to fail and 2 of them might make it big. So the more diversified your portfolio is, the better it's going to be. So. Yeah.
Some companies will fail of crowdfunding because, you know, it's in the nature that they can't do it, while others will go extremely well. And this is like every investor. Like if you talk to any investor, some of their investment didn't go well, and that wasn't equity crowdfunding, it was just investments. And the difference between us and them is that we find a new pool of people who we think could be the future business angels. And if you look at that, well, look at, let's say, the Nordics. We assess that we have roughly 2 million middle-class people who are right now already in the mindset of investing. They either are trading on a stock exchange, or they have pension shares, or the bank convinced them to buy funds or similar. Those people are already in an investment mindset. Well, those people, those are our clients too. And right now, those people who spend money on our site, they spend $6,000 per investment on average. We had celebrities, the Prime Minister of Finland invested, and wealthy business angels invested on our platform. Well, if you take 2 million potential clients just in the Nordics and multiply that by $6,000, it's a huge market opportunity for us. Well, we're not just in the Nordics, we are in Europe and in Asia, so we think it's a huge market opportunity, and these people that we talk to are already in the system. They're already spending money or investing. We just give them an alternative asset class.
All right. You addressed this in the presentation as well about the regulatory issues.
Yeah.
And of course you have faced them, and that was the reason you started in the first place, was because you couldn't get funding in the US, where the first crowdfunding website was launched. So, and you also said you had to push, you just had to keep pushing, otherwise it never changed. Can you elaborate a bit on that? And will it be regulation that will prevent you from growing further, or will you push regulation? Will you succeed in that?
No, so all companies act in the modern world, including Denmark, has their roots in the 1930s and the Depression, where a lot of people lost their money because people told them, look, you should invest in this because it's going to cure cancer and baldness and everything. And when a lot of regular people got fooled, new regulation came out saying that you can't address the general public because they are unaware or unintelligent or whatever. So all regulations tell you how to talk to the general masses or not to talk to them at all. In Sweden, we have a good rule saying that everybody is equal under the law. In the US, they say rich people are different and poor people are different. So you have a rule in the US where you actually can address rich people because they are assumed to be smart, while poor people you can't address. So right now that has changed. As I mentioned before, the Jobs Act told that now you can reach everybody. So we do think that most European countries will also follow similar legislations by putting not infringing rules, but rather policies on how can you behave. Like, for instance, who should you talk to, how much are they allowed to invest, how much risk can they take, and what your responsibilities are. In Finland, that rule is in effect. In Europe, France came with really good laws, Italy came with really good laws, Germany came with really good laws, and Sweden are right now creating a policy for this.
Together with us.
Together with us.
Yeah.
Because we pushed.
Yeah.
And we're going to push continuously. And I think when we stop pushing, I hope other people come pushing, because there's always going to be a law that has to be changed. And this law dictates how you could address people on a general market. But this law doesn't take in effect that we live in a social generation where we actually share knowledge online, where we can find information extremely openly, where transparency is key, and if you can find problems. Like in our system, we have a flagging system. So if there's problems, somebody will find the issues. They will flag and say, this guy is untrustworthy, or this idea can't happen, or somebody else holds the patent. So basically, our due diligence is done by the masses rather than by ourselves.
All right, so going back to your own careers, Daniel, everybody wants to know, would you still major in arts history if you got the chance?
I love art. I think, yes, I would have, of course. What I hope eventually is that I can go back to art somehow, but not as a curator or producer, but rather as a sponsor or similar. I think the mindset of the art world is extremely interesting. I love the fact what it does. You know, it pushes boundaries. I also see myself. It's no different what I'm doing right now.
So that was a yes, and you wouldn't redo anything on the FundedByMe startup. And everybody always says you never regret what you did, just what you didn't do. So let me ask you that question: what haven't you done that you now regret you haven't done yet, or should have done?
Me?
Both of you.
That I should have done.
Yeah, maybe you should take. You're Arno, you're 32.
Yes.
Yeah, and Daniel's
32.
37. Yeah, so.
Well,
There's
something
time is ticking. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. What I'm
no, but
I
think I would have.
Calling me old? No,
I would have done. I would have dared to do it earlier. I think I should have started my own company earlier.
Okay, you too.
That's
too
yes.
late.
I think I was employed too long, and I love to be employed, but it's also scary to quit your job because you get used to the paycheck. I was never paid well, but I was paid well enough, and I was lucky that my wife said, "Look, just quit your job."
Get out and do it. What about you, Arno?
I think, from my point of view, I don't really regret anything because what...
you don't regret anything, but
no.
what you didn't do, you regret.
I mean, probably should have stayed in school longer or paid more attention or something. Like, I really would have liked to have maybe, because my path was kind of like long, like just the naivety of kind of like leaving Cape Town after having studied and becoming a webmaster, which is such a dirty word nowadays anyway, and then going to London and thinking that you're going to get the best job in the world, like that naivety of just kind of like thinking that you're indestructible, maybe I should have thought about that a little bit differently. So.
Yeah.
Okay, so
But
I get
let
it.
me
So
know.
you vote for the best questions.
Or the ones they want.
Ah,
I don't
that's
know
like
if it's,
why are not the good questions coming up? Okay, I get it.
No.
Okay.
So there's a lot about. I think we soon have been through all the valuable advices you can give to entrepreneurs and everything. But Jane has one. That's is there anything that can't be crowdfunded?
Yeah,
that
I
we're
think
about to
everything
round it up.
can be cut, but not really everything. If something's secret and you can't tell the world, you should not tell the world, especially not online. Some stuff takes a lot of research, and you have to do it differently, and it is you need a lot of governmental funding for that. Let's say biochemistry experiments, whatever. It can't really be crowdfunded. And some stuff we've tried and failed. Like we've tried, I think, four or five fish farms by now, and on our site, our clients don't tend to like fish farms. They like apps and ice cream companies and burger joints and business and e-commerce and cool stuff. Yeah.
So agriculture is no go.
No, it is. It is. It does work. But I think somebody's raising his hand for quite a while now.
Can you? Yeah. No, it's a question. Excuse me. It's another thing. It's another thing. Yeah. We have to round it up very quickly. So. So which country is the most creative one you've visited? And you come from various countries as well.
Yeah. So I think actually the Nordics are extremely good at cultivating creativity. I would say Norway is the worst one because they have so much money, so they actually make people lazy. But it's
They have
true.
like half Fridays, don't
No, but
they?
they have
Like
this,
generally or something.
this is a myth, I think. But the problem with having too much money is that it takes away the hunger, and creativity comes out of hunger. You need to be small. Like Denmark is awesome because we have the same problem as in Sweden. We are too small, so you have to think big from day one. You have to think global. Like the Germans never grow, the UK sites never grow. Danish companies become big, Swedish companies become big. So creativity is nothing that you can force, but you can have it by allowing people to make mistakes, allowing them to quit their careers and come back, allowing them to maybe join a startup at 48. And also making sure that we harness creativity, because right now, for instance, there's a lot of people coming to Europe who are extremely creative, and we can't use that creativity, and it's insane.
So maybe I'm just going to interrupt you, Daniel, because you can talk forever. Last questions coming here. So what's your the next startup that you're going to do? Because you're not going to be in FundedByMe forever. You have an IPO coming up, and because that's not in your DNA.
Yeah.
So.
So my next startup, I think I'm most likely going to do what I'm doing now. So I'm involved in quite a lot of startups. So I'm going to be more play the business angel role, I think. That's something. So I'm going to, rather than helping one startup, I hope I can help 1,000 startups or 100 by being a business angel. I'm doing that already. But I actually have a secret idea about the art field. I would love to recreate a piece of art by Marcel Duchamp, which is insane. And I think if we do that, it's like a 80-year project.
Fantastic. So the art will become.
But it's going to be historical, though,
world.
if we do it.
Yeah.
And Arno, what about you? Your next startup?
It's either going to be in kind of like incubation, acceleration, or maybe
in what? Excuse me.
Incubation or acceleration
Of
in terms of like the
chicken eggs, right?
Yeah, so
Chicken
that's
eggs,
what's very
okay.
popular in Namibia. Or alternatively, I mean, due to the fact that I'm from Africa, I feel that there is a very big emerging economy in terms of like things that can or cannot be done, and all of this experience and entrepreneurial experience and the force that we have in terms of like investments, I would like to kind of like take that over there and do something with it. So.
With Africa. Well, guys, thank you very much. Very inspiring speech.
Thank you. Thank you.